Welcome back. The battle for the 1st Congressional District in Wisconsin. Recent internal polling from the DCCC suggests a close race between Republican Congressman Brian Stile and his Democratic challenger Peter Barca.
This past week, we grabbed coffee with both alongside Green Party candidate Chester Todd, who's looking to take votes from one party in particular. What are your polls showing here just days out from this race? How close of a race is this?
You know, I don't really look at the polls. The only poll that matters is on Election Day. And so I'm focused on getting the word out and the message out to folks about the importance of getting our country back on track. And I'm asking for folks' vote across the district. And so I don't spend a lot of time looking at the early polling. As we know in the state of Wisconsin, that can be inaccurate at times. The end of the day is in Wisconsin, you run the race like it's competitive. You run all the way through the tape, and I'm planning to do that for the next 3 weeks.
This is a seat that's been held by a Republican for nearly 30 years. If that were to change, what do you think that says about this race?
Well, I'm committed to making sure that I'm successful at the end of the day, and I think we will be because when we are out talking to people, when I'm speaking with folks, they want to turn the corner on the policies that we've experienced from 4 years, the Biden administration. They know that we can do better than we're doing right now economically. There's room for improvement in this economy. And so I'm committed to making sure that we give ourselves that opportunity to get back on course, that we change from the policies of the broken border, the Biden-Harris administration. We secure the border. We help our communities here in southeast Wisconsin. And so I think we have that opportunity. I'm going to continue to work to do just that in the home stretch of this campaign.
We know that voters really care about the economy, one of the top issues that's driving them to the polls. Democrats, though, really talked about abortion again this election cycle. If a national abortion ban was put on the floor, how would you vote for that?
It's an important topic that's not well settled in 30-second negative TV ads. I think it's important to know that in the state of Wisconsin, the current law allows abortion up till 20 weeks, halfway through a woman's pregnancy. I've always had reasonable exceptions for rape, incest, in life of the mother. President Trump has made clear, and Speaker Johnson has made clear, that a national abortion ban is not going to move forward in the House, and I would not support such a move in the House either.
You do not support a federal nationwide abortion ban?
I think President Trump has made clear, Speaker Johnson has made clear, and I would support not allowing that to move forward.
Talking about the election, talking about November 5th, the House Administration Committee that you chair oversees federal elections. Can you say definitively that Wisconsin will have a safe and secure election?
We've been doing a lot of work to make sure that Wisconsin has a safe and secure election. I'm confident that we can have that here in this state. I think my record on the topic speaks for itself, but we need to make sure that we're working to secure our elections. It's why I support reasonable controls like photo ID. That's a contrast to my opponent who voted against photo ID when he was a legislator in Madison. And so I think we all need to be working to enhance the integrity of our election, Americans' confidence in their election, and I think we have the opportunity to do that this cycle.
Will you vote to certify the results no matter who wins the presidency on November 5th?
Who wins the presidency should have no impact on the ultimate certification, and my record speaks for itself on this issue. I think we have an opportunity to make sure that we have a safe and secure election. I continue to work to make sure that's the case. The last time that a Democrat held this seat was nearly 30 years ago. You were that Democrat to hold this seat. Why is now the time that you believe that there's the opportunity to flip this seat back?
Yeah. Well, first of all, now is the time we need to not only flip this seat, but others as well. We have a do-nothing dysfunctional Congress, and it is a terrible service to the people of Wisconsin, the people of the country, and certainly this district. People, I think, have a right to expect results.
You don't have the support of the Kenosha County Sheriff or other law enforcement agencies here in the district. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I do have support by many law enforcement officials. You know, the former police chief in Racine, Art Howell, supports me. The former sheriff, Bob Spoden, the former commander of the Kenosha Police Department, supports me. I've always had strong support from police, and the reason why that is because I go to bat for them. I got 100,000 more cops as part of a crime bill that I helped to pass when I was in Congress.
Your critics point to you not supporting voter ID in the past as an issue. Is that still your stance?
Well, first of all, I do support voter ID. In fact, I do not support the extreme versions of voter ID that my opponent is pushing. He wants people to have to show a passport, and he's trying to make it restrictive to limit people's ability to vote.
What don't you agree with
What I don't agree with is my opponent would like people to have to show a passport, or have to show in order to get a voter ID card, or restricting like college IDs. You know, when we were in the legislature, they tried to make it so you couldn't use your college identification card. I think that's outrageous. You know, it should be easy for people to be able to prove where they live and be able to vote, and you shouldn't make it so you have hurdles that limit people from voting.
Former President Trump is calling on Congress to pass legislation that would ban sanctuary cities. He's called on Congress to do that in the past. Is that something that you would support?
Well, first of all, let me make it clear, I am not for sanctuary cities. That's a decision that's made at a local level generally, and if I were a member of the city council in Janesville or Whitewater or Kenosha, I would not vote for that. But the question is, should the national government or should the state government decide those things for local governments? And so that's where the issue came in. But you know, my opponent falsely said I supported sanctuary cities. I didn't support sanctuary cities. I've never voted for that, nor do I support it.
So if it came before Congress, if you were elected in November, and this comes up in Congress, how would you vote?
Well, you mean to ban it
To
so
ban
that no
sanctuary
community could have it? I would
cities.
seek. First of all, we don't have any in the first congressional district, and I'm somebody that cares deeply about what mayors and town officials. Well, let me finish. I would talk to them. I want to see how they feel, but I'd be open to that. Let me put it that way.
What is the goal for Election Day for you in terms of even how many votes you actually get in this race?
My goal, and I'll be straight up about it, is to show the Democrats you don't have a lockdown on black votes. And I want that.
So how will you show them that? What's the bar? What's the metric that you're going to be looking at on Election Day?
If we can take a certain percentage from the Democrat, if we can take a percentage away from him and let it ride and let my Brother Stiles, stay where he's at, you know, maybe this will be a wake up to the Democrats in this state.
So 16 days to go.
The question now is whether Democrats can flip the first congressional. J.R. Ross, editor of WisPolitics.com, is standing by. His new reporting next.